Back with us on the SportsMax Zone, the International Rugby League has swiftly followed the lead of the International Swimming Federation, FINA, by banning transgender women from competing in international games. The International Rugby League, IRL, stressed it was important to balance the individual's right to participate against perceived risks to other participants. It was a similar sentiment from FINA, which on Sunday voted to ban transgender swimmers from competing in elite women's races if they have gone through male puberty. That means they would have had to transition from male to female before the age of 12 to be eligible to compete. The president of FINA, Hussein Al-Musallam, explained the importance of his federation's landmark move during Sunday's Congress in the Hungarian capital, Budapest.
And all of you have an obligation to every single one of our athletes. We should not favor one athlete over the other. Equality is also a key principle for us. This is why we are faced with such a delicate balancing act. We have to protect the rights of all our athletes to compete. But we also have to protect competitive fairness at our events, especially women's competition.
Importantly, swimming says it will establish an open category. Well, FINA says it will establish an open category to allow transgender women to compete. Meanwhile, the boss of World Athletics, Lord Sebastian Coe, has hinted his federation could follow FINA's lead. According to Lord Coe, quote, "Fairness in sport is non-negotiable," end quote. FINA's ruling at Congress was prompted by the backlash which greeted the dominance of transgender swimmer Leah Thomas on the U.S. collegiate swimming circuit this year. Thomas's opponents say she should never be allowed to compete with women, given the obvious advantages she would have gained from going through puberty as a man. In her defense, Thomas says she competes mainly to show transgender children that they are not alone. We're joined by Anil Roberts, a distinguished swimming coach, a man who has coached an Olympic medalist in the pool. He's, of course, opposition senator in Trinidad and Tobago, and a man who is up on his sport and his current affairs. So even if you took away 5 hats from Anil, he'd still have enough hats to qualify him to speak with us about this issue. Anil Roberts, welcome. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, and thank you very much. And it is a very proud day for sport, and especially, even though I love all sports, you know, swimming has a dear, close part in my heart, soul, and spirit. And it is not often that I get to say this, but well done to the president of FINA, well done to the FINA Bureau, well done to the administrators and the global administrators of swimming. They got it absolutely correct. They got it absolutely right. They went and they got the solution based on science, based on fairness, based on equity, and they shall lead the rest of the world in the right direction as the NCAA embarrassed themselves and got it wrong. The IAAF on certain issues that may not be exactly this one are getting it wrong. FINA, the world body of swimming, its president from Saudi Arabia, must be given a resounding round of applause for allowing women to continue to benefit from freedom in sport, competitive fairness that they have fought for decades. It was an injustice that has been corrected, and I cannot commend FINA and its executive more highly. I'm very proud of them.
Anil, I thought there was tactical sensibility in what FINA did at that Congress in Budapest on the weekend, because not only did they announce what the policy was, in anticipation of blowback from those who would want transgender women to race with women on an even keel, he signposted Anil Roberts. He said, "In 6 months' time, we'll come back to you with chapter, verse, and regulations where the policy for an open category is concerned. So those who will preach non-inclusion and will preach exclusion for transgender athletes, FINA has said, well, you can compete in an open category, and in 6 months' time, we're going to tell you how that will work. I thought that was the part of the brilliance in what was announced on Sunday.
Clap again, amazing, brilliant. And that is the position. Nobody says that you want to exclude anyone from the beauty, the brilliance, the discipline, the strength building, the mental ability, the beauty and the passion of sport. But sport must be fair. And if you go through puberty as a man, you have high levels of testosterone. Testosterone gives you speed, strength, ability to leap, to generate power and muscle. And therefore, you have an advantage against women who have a far lower content of testosterone. So to allow people to compete, yes, they should be the transgender games, and they should get sponsors and have their own medals and move together and say that they're champions. That's fine. Everybody who wants to watch it will watch it. Who wants to look at it and cheer on and compete, great. But to say that a man can just say at 22, 23, 18, 16 that he is now a woman, put on a swimming suit and go and race against girls that have been girls all their lives, it's totally insane. FINA got it correct. And as you said, the brilliance is that there will be a category for transgender athletes to compete. And that is fair.
The science, Anil, the science really has formed the basis of FINA's decision. Because here's the thing. I was reading something companion to the FINA decision on the weekend, which said that science has proven that in the sport of boxing, I never knew this before. I always thought that a man would hit harder than a woman if both of them threw the same punch. But I never knew by what degree until that companion document that I read on the weekend, Anil, said that the science proves that a man in boxing throws a punch with 162% more power than a woman can. Now, if you have been forged through adolescence, let's think about boxing for a second, because I'm looking at other sports falling into line. If you can go through adolescence as a man, training to deliver a punch at that level, and then you do whatever you do, and you are now identifying as a woman, and you've now transitioned into a woman, clearly there must be some residual benefit to that time in your life, a formative phase, where you could throw a punch with 162% more power than a woman. And in there, Anil Roberts, lies the disadvantage that women face against trans women, and therein lies the reason that FINA's move should be copied by other sporting associations en bloc, I would say.
And I totally agree, and I'm glad that you went to the sweet science, because therein lies the danger. Because if a transgender man who transforms to a female fights a woman and can hit at 162% harder, that puts the woman's life in jeopardy in the ring. Now, the same advantage goes across any sport. In swimming, the reason we got it right is swimming is a purely scientific sport. You deal with anaerobic capacity, which is your ability to generate power and speed. You deal with technical ability, lung capacity, and speed. No matter what, if you are a woman, they're the best, most technically efficient, brilliant female swimmer cannot swim within 3 seconds of a man who has a similar level of skill or proficiency, because of that genetic male difference with the testosterone. So the boxing is the highest example. UFC, this will be putting athletes' lives at risk if they are to fight against transgender athletes who had gone through puberty. But just like a sprint, anyone who understands, go and look at all the records. Go and look maybe at 10 and under. You will see that girls could sometimes run faster than boys at 10 years old, 8 years old, because girls are maturing at a faster rate. But once those boys hit puberty and the testes kick in and testosterone, 13, 14, 15, the boys start to move away. The boys' records, go and check it, start to move further and further away from the girls until you have Usain Bolt 9.5 and the women at 10.4, 10.5, a whole second in a 100 meters. So FINA got it correct. It is unfair to have a transgender male swimming or running or competing or boxing against a woman. It is unfair and it is wrong. It is unsporting, and FINA got it right. And transgender athletes must have their transgender games, their open competition, and may the best transgender athlete win.
The last thing to say on this, Anil Roberts, is that in April, when I had the pleasure of interviewing Lord Sebastian Coe, the World Athletics boss, at the National Stadium in Kingston, he was a guest of the organizers of the Carifta Games, the 49th Carifta Games. We spoke about the existential crisis that track and field faced, and he confessed that the issue of how to handle transgender athletes or athletes with the women, female athletes with advanced levels, heightened levels of testosterone, that was the biggest challenge of his career. Not that it was a challenge that emerged this year, but it was the abiding biggest challenge of his tenure, and it posed an existential crisis for track and field. So I would suggest to Lord Coe, Anil Roberts, that through FINA, he has his way out. He has more than enough reason to act in the manner prescribed so that this existential threat is neutralized.
Absolutely correct. And FINA got it right because FINA stuck to the science. Track and field has been getting it wrong for about 6 years now. Higher levels of testosterone means you have an advantage. Once you have an adequate level of skill, you will win. So it's not a competition. It is unfair. And so even with athletes who are, quote, female, but have high levels of testosterone up to 6-to-1 or 7-to-1 epitestosterone to testosterone levels, that is simply unfair. So track and field played politics. Swimming went with the science, and swimming got it correct. Well done to FINA. Well done to the executive. The world governing body of swimming has led the way. All must follow.
Hear you on that. You've spoken well, Senator. Thank you very much for your time. All the best. We'll catch up.
Thank you. God bless. Be safe.
Good, good, good. Yeah. So, you know, things though, Whitaker, happen in... You've heard it said, I'm sure, that there's no such thing, there's nothing better than an idea whose time has come. And the move taken by FINA now, when they've had the benefit of reviewing the science, not just in swimming, but across several sports, when this issue reared its head, and I won't say ugly head because the reality is that trans people are people, yeah? When this issue reared its head with Semenya and everything else, at that time, the IAAF then, I'm suggesting to you, could not have acted then in the way that FINA has acted now and that World Athletics can act now. Because guess what? The benefit of the science wasn't there. It wasn't conclusive. Although you and I know from COVID that no science is conclusive. Because one doctor says yellow and the other doctor says blue, and then you're left confused as to say, you know.
One doctor says face masks work and another one says it doesn't.
Exactly. Yeah. But just the fact of the advancement of the science and other important information to form a collective of data, and data makes information that then allows you to make a decision. So I'm saying to you that the idea of approaching transgender athletes this way, put that idea into policy, that time has come now. We need to cut the IAAF a little slack, because I doubt Coe and company could have done then what FINA is doing now.
Yeah, and there's a slight difference, of course, because the high testosterone levels in like a Semenya isn't the same as a transgender athlete. So there is a gray area there as well, because even now I think there are a lot of people who, while they accept the general principle of sport being fair to each athlete, there are a lot of people, especially from this part of the world and black people, that Caster Semenya was hard done by. You know, there are a lot of people who are still convinced that they are being unfair to her. So it is a tough hurdle to clear and a tough issue to satisfy all of the different views. I heard in the soundbite that we carried from Al Musallam, he was at pains. You heard the words he used. He said, it's a delicate balance. No, he said it's a delicate balance, but to many of us, it's not a delicate, it's a straightforward thing. Yeah. But because he is in the position that he is, and fairness and equity and respect for every human being is at the forefront of what he has to present, he is minded to put it in that way. But I'm sure if we had spoken longer with Anil Roberts, he wouldn't think that it's a delicate balance.
No.
As far as he's concerned, it's a straightforward, logical decision to make. But he said it clearly, it's a delicate balance because he recognizes that even as they make these decisions, there are those who will argue against it and find some way to disagree with the position they've taken.
You were spot on to point out the Caster Semenya issue and the support she has from this side of the world. But I would suggest to you that the overwhelming majority of the support that Semenya has gotten from this part of the world is because she's black. Yes. Were she white, there'd be less sympathy for her.
I think I agree with you on that.
There you go. All right, so that's one. The other thing is this. Let's look at what FINA has done, not the detail, but the principle. What FINA has done is say, okay, if you are of a certain makeup, then you can't compete with women. And we're going to create an open category. I'm saying that what track and field couldn't have done is, at that time of the Semenya issue, say that, look, the majority of women who compete in our events have testosterone levels within this band.
Yes.
Those who fall outside of this band, you are banned. Pun intended. Yeah? And then for those outside of the range who are banned, we are going to create an open category. That could not have been done. So that's a principle of what FINA has done, not the details, because the details, of course, between swimming and track and field are different. So I'm saying that politically, Lord Cole would have had the world fall on his back, his shoulders, everything. And we weren't ready for that yet because the science did not support a decision like that. And he could have tiptoed all he wanted, trying to be fair and inclusive, which they have to be. And I'm happy you pointed out that the FINA boss was painstaking in saying, look, we have to balance the need to open up participation against the rights of those who are participating, those who are inside the crucible. So it's just that the principle could not have been adopted then by IAAF because of the reasons I cited, but no, they can so do, especially because other forerunning organizations, sporting bodies, have done so, and the science supports such a move.
But one of the issues that we have to accept, though, George, is that in this Caster Semenya issue, by the tests and everything, the Caster Semenya defenders put their hands up and say she's a woman, and it is accepted that she's a woman. So because of that, it creates a different discussion with regard to transgender. Now her testosterone levels are high. She's been directed, if she wants to compete in her favorite events, to take medication to reduce her testosterone levels. So the Semenya defenders are upset when they hear that, George, because here they are saying, you know, you don't want people to use drugs. No, you're asking her to take drugs to reduce her testosterone levels. So part of the issue that the IAAF had faced, well, the World Athletics as it now is, whether we're IAAF when the problem started, was that by their own tests, Caster Semenya biologically is a woman.
But the issue wasn't the biological nature of Semenya. And the issue wasn't Semenya's gender. The issue was that this woman has testosterone levels that are outliers. Look, you remember your math lessons. We talk about outliers in terms of figures.
Yes.
If they surveyed 800 women who competed at age group events of IAAF back then, from a senior level up down to the junior level, and 800 women, you would have about 20-25 who had elevated testosterone levels, including Caster Semenya. And it was seen that when these women competed, these women had an advantage over other women who fell within the acceptable band.
Yes.
So it is that IAAF couldn't cream off and say, okay, you know what? So the range is 5 to 10. If you are 12 to 18 or 12 to 25, you're going to have to compete in your own. Semenya wouldn't have a race to run because how many people were like her in the 800 meters and the 1500 meters? So it's just that I think that now is the right time for organizations to be doing this. I don't think it was a tool available before now. And even though it's still controversial.
It is. It is. And I said it's the transgender issue that we've been discussing here. But the high testosterone level, I think, will still linger as a very, very contentious issue, and one that the Lord Sebastian Coe and his band of world athletics leaders will have to grapple with for a long time.
Yes, indeed. All right, let's take the break. Zone Update 2 after these. Thank you for watching SportsMax on YouTube. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and click the notification bell to stay informed.